Black Politics Today, an eye for what's at stake in global politics and your source for the social, economic, and political impact of public policy on the African American community. Your host, Kelly Michael Williams, is a political strategy veteran with an undefeated campaign record and the political experience that spans nearly 3 decades, from Mayor Willie Brown in California to President Barack Obama in our nation's capital. So get ready for a fresh and honest approach on the politics that affect you and your family the most. Now, your host, Kelly Michael Williams.
Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Kelly Michael Williams. I am so excited and appreciative to be here tonight, as I am each and every week. I just, it's one of those things that you are, excited about, you appreciate, you want to thank, as I do each week. I just thank God that I'm able to be here and able to do what we do. So it's always a pleasure. It's always good. It's always exciting to talk about the social, the economic, and the political impact of things that are occurring across the country. The things that are impacting us each and every day. It's just, incredible that we do what we do. And I'm excited to be able to, reach out each and every week just to have a dialogue or discussion with subject matter experts, elected officials, academia, whoever it is, to talk about what's at stake for us. Because certainly there's so much at stake for us now. I mean, 46 states or 43 states, that should let us know exactly what's at stake for us, because it is certainly a lot. And right now we have to be diligent. We have to be, active. We have to make sure that we touch our community and that we touch our family to make sure they understand what's at stake. Because quite frankly, I don't think people know. I don't think they really pay attention. I don't think they really recognize the whole impact of what's going on. And that's why we call the show What's at Stake, right here on Black Politics Today. And it's one of those things where you have to really pay attention, because if you just listen to the noise, and a lot of the times the GOP, they usually get the ability to, regulate the noise. They have the ability to really put out what they want to put out. And because they're able to do that, it causes us sometimes to believe what we're hearing. And we have to recognize that we cannot believe what these folks are saying and what they're talking about. It's amazing to me that they're talking about cancel culture, but they're the main ones who are canceling everybody out. They're the main ones telling folks, yeah, no, you can't do this, or we're not going to support that. I mean, did I see a message or something go out saying Donald Trump is going to now tell everyone to boycott Major League Baseball? Oh, okay. So when the threat of boycotting Atlanta was on the table, the governor was like, don't bow to the pressure. You're weak if you do. Don't do this. Don't do that. But at the very moment when Major League Baseball says, all right, we're out of here, we're not going to support this force of a bill and this legislation, and it, impacts, our bottom line too much, we're not going to support it. Now they're saying, oh, we have to cancel. We have to not participate. We don't want to be around it. I mean, let's think about that. This past week, many of you under house arrest had an opportunity to watch the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer from Minnesota. And watch exactly the whole trial and what was going on, and this idea that him putting his knee on George Floyd's neck for actually 9 minutes and 29 seconds compared to the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that we were told about before. Now it's much longer. Now we find out that it was longer on his neck than it was before. And so what happens? What's going on that we're just now finding that out or getting wind of this? Well, that's because we were not aware. We weren't aware that all this was happening and all this was going on, which is the reason why it's so important to watch these trials, get the information, see the body cams from different positions. But not only did Chauvin put his knee on Floyd's neck and hold it there for so long, he never checked his pulse. He never checked his pulse. And even to the extent when paramedics came to check George Floyd's pulse, Chauvin never moved his knee. Because I don't know that her video, that original video that I ever saw, showed the paramedics come and show what happened and how everything happened. I had never seen that before. I had never witnessed that information in the original video. And maybe it cut too soon. I'm not sure, but I never saw that. So watching the trial gave me some perspective of what happened. And Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck is emblematic of the government-induced and systemic racism that we face for more than 250 years. George Floyd was murdered. And what gets me is that ignorant, ill-informed Candace Owens. You know, that's like that one, you know, a piece of popcorn that gets stuck in your tooth. Yeah. Her behind goes on Instagram to sit there and talk about George Floyd and all his issues with opioid addiction and all this other stuff, and then wants to come out and say there's no systemic racism. There's no systemic racism. Not to mention the crackhead that she supports, Donald Trump, and all the mess that he has done. She's going to sing out George Floyd and talk about him, you know, as why is he a martyr? Why is he this? Why is he that? You know, we should not do this. We should not do that. And she's talking about him so badly, but then she ends with, America, there is no systemic racism. There is no systemic racism. Now, this is coming from the same chick who used the NAACP to file a lawsuit against someone who she said discriminated against her. Now, Candace was born in '89. This happened sometime like in 2000 to 2003. So I'm sorry. If you were discriminated against in the issue that you were fighting and asking the NAACP to fight for you, which she did win. I think she got a settlement of like $37,000 or $40,000. If that happened in 2003, newsflash, Candace Owens, that's systemic. That's systemic. That's the systemic racism we're talking about. Because if you're having it in 2003 and you're saying, oh, slavery is over and all this other stuff is gone, we shouldn't be having racism today. We shouldn't be having it right now. It shouldn't be going on, but it is. And your test tube baby behind need to understand, because most Black folks know this, except for those who live in that alternative reality, you know, that conservative talking points. I mean, you have Georgia State Legislature, the Georgia State Legislature say that they're going to guarantee voting rights or early voting on Saturday, but then they don't do it on Sunday. That's racist, because we know who goes to the polls on Sunday. To put your knee on a Black man's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds and never once attempt to deal with the individual's need for medical care or check a pulse or do anything like that, even after he stopped talking and moving, not only is that careless, but because you're white and he's Black and you did that to him because you would never do that to a white man, it's racist. blocking individuals' right to vote in Black and brown communities and not blocking them in white communities is racist. And this has been going on for years and years and years, and it hasn't stopped. So Candace Owens, guess what? That makes it systemic. I know that's hard, big word for you to understand, but it does. And that's exactly what's going on with us right now. The hundreds of communities of color have experienced for decades systematic, structural, institutional racism. The proverbial knee of Derek Chauvin on George Floyd's neck is emblematic of employment discrimination that we've had to face, housing, criminal justice system, healthcare, and business. Bus, having to sit in the back of the bus, having what we're going to find out later today, having systems put in place that are strategically designed to hold down Black and brown communities. That's what happens. And so one city has done something that Congress has not been able to do, and that's provide reparations to Black America. Reparations to Black Americans in their city, in their hometown. Small city right outside of Illinois. Many of you probably watched Soul of a Nation and saw this clip and saw the information that was going on in that city and what's happening there. And they have come up with a solution to America's longest active lie to Black America. And that lie was, we're going to give you 40 acres and a mule. But we still haven't gotten it. And Evanston, Illinois is the first municipality to actually fund and begin to pay out to its residents and survivors for longstanding discrimination in their city. It was under housing, and because that was the policy of the city's plan to strategically put Black residents in a certain part of the city, in a certain part of town, annex them off from every other areas, and not allowing them to buy or live in those more prosperous and wealthy areas, was strategic, Candace Owens. It was also systemic, structural. They did it because they wanted to do it. My guest tonight is the author of the reparations bill approved by the Evanston City Council back in 2019. Alderman Robin Rue Simmons is a strategist, a civil entrepreneur, and alderman for Evanston's 5th District. She began her career 22 years ago when she launched her first business as a real estate broker. She was troubled by the wealth disparities in the concentrated poverty in urban communities. She wanted to help young adults build wealth through home ownership. When she was elected in 2017, she has been known for her solutions-only approach in services and business. Alderman Simmons is the Director of Innovation and Outreach at Sunshine Enterprises, which has supported over 1,000 neighborhood entrepreneurs, 98% of which are African Americans and 74% are women, in launching or growing their businesses. She also serves as the Chief Strategist at Ujima. Am I pronouncing that right? Ujima, which is a collective work and responsibility solutions group. She represents the 5th Ward in Evanston, Illinois, a predominantly Black ward, where the reparations bill, I'm sure, is going to have the greatest impact and greatest effect. And we want to welcome her to the show right now and thank her for joining us. Good evening, Alderman Simmons. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much. For some reason, I seem to be froze on my side. I don't know if I'm froze on your side.
You're been frozen most of the time. That's why I wasn't sure if this was
really
radio or video or yes.
No, it's supposed to be video, but we're gonna have to talk to Verizon and figure out what's going on here because we have cleared this situation up, but apparently it's still gonna go. But as long as you can hear me, I'll work on and have my folks work on the video side of things. Check that out, guys. But let me welcome you again to the show and thank you for joining us tonight. Talk to me. Let me get started with you on this because when I look at the whole idea of reparations and what you've been able to do in Evanston, as we've noted, Evanston is the first municipality that's actually been able to collect the money and actually start paying out to your residents. Somewhere I read you had an epiphany about this. So talk to me about that epiphany that you had, and tell us about the idea that came about to start to introduce this bill.
Perfect. So actually, I first want to say I agree with everything that you said. I've been on since 6, and you're absolutely right. This is historic, systemic. It is structural, and it is intentionally oppressing the Black community. And so our city is not unique. We're like many other American cities that have been founded under anti-Black practices in a anti-Black nation that established itself on kidnapping Africans and enslaving them here in America. But in our city specifically,
Right.
we had to advance a reparation initiative within our purview and within the specific legislative actions that were enforced in Evanston. This is not HR 40. This is not America's reparations, but this is Evanston's reparation. And my revelation one day in February of 2019 is there are reparations that need to be enforced and paid, benefits that need to be applied for many areas of injury. Yes, chattel enslavement, and that's the one that we default when we talk about reparations, but there's Jim Crowing, there's redlining, there's mass
Right.
incarceration, over policing, there's predatory lending. Let's pick any one of them and begin the repair work. So in our city, after a report, we found that historically, from 1919 to 1969, there have been intentional anti-Black housing and zoning policy that, as you so appropriately said, restricted the Black community to live in the west end of the Fifth Ward, is where I was raised, is where I've raised my family. I live and serve here today on purpose. We were restricted to living here. And with that limitation, we were not able to enjoy the same livability, the same quality of life, the same access to wealth and property that had high land values. We were also disinvested in, disenfranchised. Our community was stripped of important amenities, including a school. We still today, in 2021, we're the only neighborhood that does not have a neighborhood school. Our children are bused throughout Evanston to
Wow.
enjoy the diversity that we celebrate here in Evanston. Our children have to get up earlier and stay out later to get on buses to go to several different schools throughout the city to get our diversity. That's at the inconvenience and the wellness of our children and our families. So what we
Let me interrupt you right there, because
Sure.
you heard me talk about my proverbial popcorn in my tooth, uh,
Mhm.
Candace Owens, because this idea that systemic racism doesn't exist in 2021 is such a fallacy and a farce among Black conservatives that want to sit out there and try to tell us, oh no, you can do it, you can do it. Yeah, you can do it, but we're talking about the whole of us, not the individual of us, because individually we can always identify success stories, but a
Mhm.
whole of us we cannot. And the fact that in 2021 in Evanston, Illinois, there's no school where you're having to bus your kids and your children to another school in another ward or another district is ridiculous. And the fact that you, like you said, that the whole idea that it was in public policy, and this idea and this crux that public policies have not been racially motivated to keep us and hold us back from police brutality and police surveillance, to housing, to government contracts, to healthcare. All those things are impacting us. So I'm very excited and proud of what you're doing. But finish your thought and add that into it, that issue of the systemicness of how you guys are dealing with that.
Absolutely. So it was important that for reparations, it is a legislative tool that will be defended legally. And so we fully expected, based on knowing who we are in this nation, that we would have a conservative funded legal challenge for our reparation work. So it was very important over the last 2 years. Many of us on city council, not all of us, but many of us, many stakeholders and experts built a case, and primarily Dino Robinson from Shorefront Legacy. So my first request for our commission is that we had our law department as staff on this committee. So our law department, along with my colleagues on city council and staff, along with a historian, developed a not only a narrative but a fact-based defense for Evanston case for reparations. It includes these anti-Black housing policies. The damages can be measured. Wealth was stripped away. Homes that are on my block right now were physically relocated here to my block from more east of the ward of the city, which is closer to the lakefront, and of course the property values are higher there. So that wealth was stripped away. So what we're doing is we're looking at a viable path towards reparation, this is not to solve the issues of Black America. This is not to settle the debt of chattel enslavement. This is a viable, attainable path towards reparation. It's beyond the apology. It's also beyond the debate about what's right and who's the smartest in the room and all of that. This is a plan that is tangible and is measurable. So $25,000 to $50,000 per household of wealth built through home equity is tangible. Whether a resident or family chooses to sit on that equity so that seniors can age in place, they can just sit on it to build legacy, pass it down to their families. They can use it to purchase their first home and enjoy the benefits of home ownership. They can do any types of repair. It is a tangible first step towards repair. It's not HR 40, but it is $10 million more than any other city, municipality, or even this nation has set aside in the name of repair for Black members of the community that have been harmed. They are considered crimes against humanity by the United Nations on the experiences of Black folks in America. They have been egregious harms, egregious policy and practices and culture that have damaged and injured the Black community in a measurable way. And so in 2019, when I made the recommendation to the Equity Empowerment Commission, my ask was that we do something as radical as the racism that got us here to a $46,000 per household income divide between Black and white Evanston, achievement gap, 13 years different in life expectancy. So me and my white neighbor are going to have 13 years different in life to earn money, to love our family, to build memories and legacy, to continue to, grow our families. And that is, as you said, is systemic, it is structural, it is intentional, it is anti-Black, it's what this nation is built on, and reparations are in order at every level of government, including federal government.
Absolutely. So when you came up with the idea and you had that epiphany, what were the first thoughts in your mind about, I'm going to take this to my majority white city council, including the mayor, there's 8 white, 3 Blacks, and I'm going to get this passed? What's the thought process that you go through where you say, come hell or high water, I'm getting this done?
So what I did was actually, I shot out the email then, so I couldn't talk myself out of it. I said, you know what? Because you can talk yourself, right? And you can say, oh, it'll never pass. Look at HR 40. It's been 34 years. It's never passed. I shot out that email. It was my response from data that I was looking at, and our wealth trajectory as a Black community was declining, and our Black population was also declining all the way down to 16% where we're at now. So I shot out the email. So it was living out there, and I, started the ball rolling. And my initial response from the commission chair was receptive and acknowledged it. And, kind of, yes, I agree. And there was radio silence. And then there were a few days, maybe even a week, I let it go. And then some other data point, punched me in the stomach. And then I followed up, hey, what's next steps? So within a month or so, I made a formal automatic referral to that commission and started the legislative process. And so what we have to do is we have to call the question. We have to hold our elected accountable. There is a path towards reparations. There is a legislative process. There is a legal case for injury to a community and reparations being paid. We've seen it with the Japanese internment victims. We've seen it before. So why now, when it comes to Black folks and our injury, is that we can't figure out how to do it? Yes, we can. There is a process. There's a legislative process. What you need is a strong legislative leader. You need an engaged community. You need a case for reparations, and you need a fearless legal staff to advance reparations at a local level. And these institutions need to be doing it too. So I'll tell you that we weren't alone. There were many accomplices, the financial institutions, the faith community. And we're seeing some of that now with reparations being passed with the Roman Catholic Church. And most recently, we had a major depository bank in the United States pass some sort of reparations commitment. But the work can be done, and we need to do it in a viable way. This is, let's remove the emotions, because at the end of the day, how can someone really begin to settle the debt that we have experienced? But there is a way to calculate the damages and move forward with some sort of repair and redress. So let's move beyond the emotions of it. And the facts are, we're in this nation right now, Black Lives Matter, and we all are woke now. All of a sudden, we just realize everything, right? That just happened. Okay, so now let's say, hey, right? Didn't that just happen in 2000?
Right.
Did we do that? Is that who we are? Yeah, right. That's who you are. Right. But okay, now that they acknowledge it, it's an action plan. And so that's really how I presented it. Hey, council, we passed already 100 resolutions about Black Lives Matter and equity and inclusion and what we hope to do one day. All this is an action plan to make good on those things that we say we value so much. That's all this is. And it's called reparations. And we move forward, passing it on an 8-1 vote. I'm really proud of our city. And I want to say it's the first step. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but it is the first step.
So who was the lone holdout?
So on the first vote, it was actually my colleague, Alderman Tom Suffredin. He voted no because he didn't see enough of a plan and direction. And so I really thank him for being engaged since then, calling me, asking questions, learning more. And he ended up being a yes vote. But I'm really disappointed to say the no vote was my colleague, a Black woman who, is from the same neighborhood as me, that moved on up, out of the neighborhood. Okay. And she was disengaged from the process for the last 2 years. She initially was on the committee and resigned. So she resigned from the committee, was completely disengaged, prioritizing equity, which is great because equity work is important. But in the last week or two before the vote, she sent out a press release that she wasn't in support. So the good news is she's engaged now. And the unfortunate news is that she voted no. But it didn't stop us advancing it. We still had an 8-1 vote, overwhelming support in the city. Residents are really proud of the direction. And to show that, residents have begun to contribute to the fund. So in addition to the $10 million cannabis money that we have residents and churches and a synagogue and businesses that have begun to contribute to the fund as well to grow it beyond the $10 million.
I was getting ready to ask you that because when I saw the report of I think it's I can't remember the other councilwoman's name of her dissent from it, and I think the statement was that she felt that there needed to be something else done with the money or the process rather than just paying out money to Black folks. That's the way I read it. That's the way I understood it. And I was kind of shocked. I was kind of surprised and thinking to myself, okay, what's going on in this nation for as long as it has, and that's the rationale you come up with. But the 10 million is is that the initial amount that the city is funding? And then I did hear that there are private donations or corporate donations and things like that. How does that work, and how is it set up so that the money's coming in goes out to these individuals? How do they decide who they want to pay, or they're just paying into the fund?
So the policy restricts the first $10 million of cannabis sales tax,
Okay.
And at this point, that's the public commitment. More legislative work would have to pass for us to get more than the initial $10 million. I believe the city has the appetite for that, but it is the first initial commitment, 10 million. And then the additional funds that are being contributed are going into the same pot. And that pot of money is going to be available for delivering reparation benefits. Right now, the community has decided that housing is a priority. And that's also our case for reparations that our legal department is defending. So right now, it's the $25,000 or $50,000 per household. And we'll continue in a public process, starting with the new council and committee on what the next step would be. Now, for me, based on what I know about building wealth through housing, I would be okay if we just stayed here and spent a lot of time digging deep into building wealth through housing equity. But it will be up to the community to have, or specifically the stakeholder community, to lead the council and the committee in the direction of based on what they believe, what forms of reparations we should take here in Evanston. But it's important that it's within our purview. We're a municipal government, so in our first working session, there were recommendations on school and different things. We have a school board. That's a different governing body. They have a different budget. They
Right.
were the ones that actually closed the school. So although we can give a recommendation, which we did in 2002 to the school board, we don't govern the school board. So it's important that we work towards a path that is actually viable so that we're not decades from now just hoping and aspiring to pass on forward some type of redress, but we're actually doing it in a tangible way.
And now speak to your stakeholders and let our viewers understand that you're talking about that community for which you have identified was harmed, and those individuals are going to be the ones to decide how and what reparations they get.
That's exactly right. And so we follow that appropriate methodology that the injured community must deliberate and determine and direct what forms of reparations we take. And so that's why in 2019, we had a very robust public process. There are articles that are published about it. So it's really just bizarre to hear that we didn't have a public process. We had it. Now, everyone didn't participate. So it's important that the injured community directs the remedy, and that has happened. And so that's why we're 2 years into a program. I guess I made it worse. That's why we're 2 years into a program that we only have this first proposal, because we had to hear from the community. Then we had to, oh, that helped. We had to hear from the community. Then we had to develop a legal case for reparations. And then we had to come up with some sort of program and built out a process so that we can deliver it. So it's not easy work. It's very complex. It's emotional.
Sure.
It's justice work. And we're all thinking about our lived Black experience and what that makes us feel like. And then when you think about $25,000, no, it's not enough. Heck no, it's not enough.
Right.
But it is a step towards repair, knowing that we are responsible. The state of Illinois is responsible. Congress is responsible. The financial institutions have some responsibility. And we hope that what we've done in Evanston has inspired other accomplices to anti-Blackness to join the reparations movement.
You just sparked something in me about that. I do not recall, and I recall probably some years ago where I believe either the NAACP or the Urban League sought to hold financial institutions responsible for just that, for redlining and things of that nature. But they didn't go as far as I think your bill or your legislation goes in terms of calling it reparations. They just wanted to stop the redlining and say, offer us loans. But then you offered us loans that we couldn't necessarily afford. So we had a housing crash and we ended up losing the house anyway after we paid all this money trying to keep it. Are there any ideas, or have you or fellow commissioners, aldermen, looked at holding financial institutions directly accountable?
Absolutely. So we've started locally. I'm a local leader, and we went, myself and my colleagues on the committee went to our local banks to begin this reparations challenge to them. The first one referred us to another bank. They said that they partnered with another bank to do mortgage products, and they little bit blew us off. But the next bank, we spent several months and thought we were very close to them developing a portfolio of reparation mortgage products and other financial products. And in that, let's say, 7th month of meeting, they came back and said that their corporate, because they're part of a regional bank brand, said that due to fair lending, they weren't able to do the program. And so, and I appreciate that. But until you do it, you're not able to do it. It's justice. You have to be able to push and be uncomfortable. And so, like we were in Evanston, we found a legal way. We found a way within our purview, within our home rule municipality, to advance something in the name of reparations. And so we're going to keep fighting until we find the bank that has the appetite and the heart to advance it. But in the meantime, what we're doing is, along with our resource guide for reparations, we're going to provide a list of Black banks and a list of federally insured banks that have a history of fair lending, so that those that use their reparation benefit for home purchase do have the benefit of using a Black bank, if that's the choice that they make. And we'll keep advocating. I just spoke at the Federal Reserve last month and challenged an audience of 5,000 to do more in the banking industry. And I had, positive feedback and more interest in making that commitment. You probably saw in the news that there's the first bank in America that has passed a reparation initiative. I'd love to learn more about what that actually means.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, but what I want to see and what we deserve is to see reparation programming that has funding. In government and in institutions, your budget is a moral document. And if you have a budget that doesn't speak to justice and reparations, you could keep all the resolutions and proclamations. We don't need another one of those.
Those mean nothing.
Right.
Those mean nothing. If you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 516-590-0143. That's 516-590-0143. Or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can always send us a comment in the comments box, and we'll get that up on the screen and or to Alderman Simmons. One of the things that gets me as I was watching some of the clips on the reparations, and then the initial stages that you guys went through with the town hall meetings and things of that nature. As I watched it, one of the things that came to mind was South Africa and apartheid. Mm-hmm. And most people, especially most Black folks, don't understand and don't know that apartheid started in 1948 mm-hmm. and just ended in 94 when the Clinton administration came in, and when Representative now I'm losing my name now. Ron Dellums mm-hmm. put forth a bill in Congress to uphold sanctions against South Africa for their apartheid stance. And that short 46 years turned around a nation of wealth for Black folks that completely was taken away from them almost instantly. I mean, that 46 years, socially, economically, and politically, took the political power and the power structure from the majority of African Americans, or Africans, majority of Africans, and shifted to the white minority. Even to this day, they still do that. I was there a few years back, and the hotel, I stayed in Mandela's Hotel, Mandela Square. Everyone in the hotel is Black except for the managers. All the managers were white. And I still felt that sort of oppressive culture there, even at that point, because when you get there, oh, welcome home, brother, welcome home, all that. And I look now at what we're dealing with right now with Georgia and the policies of voting, and Texas and Pennsylvania, and all those things that you talk about. When I saw your clip and saw that it was written in the law, the policies were written in. And that's the thing that I don't think most people recognize, is that even though time changes and someone else gets reelected or elected, the policy that they put in place is still on the books.
That's right.
It's still there. I mean, even in some of the southern states where interracial marriages is still on the books, they don't enforce it, but it's still there.
That's
And
right.
so the idea of what's happening with where we're going right now, if we don't do something, if we don't respond to Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona and the voting rights and all the other things that they're doing, we can literally be in an apartheid situation ourselves. So a bill like yours for reparations, I can see it starting a firestorm, but yet it's still there because it's a threat to the powers that be, but it has such a great impact. What's the conversation that the rest of America in Congress needs to have, being able to identify through their communities and cities locally, like you've started, start small locally and build out?
So the conversation is happening. It's not what they should have. We've been hearing from cities across the nation on how they might model something like what we've done. And my response has always been, start now. You know, your reparation program is going to be different than ours because your history of the policy and practices are going to be different.
Right.
But start now with urgency, understanding these are incremental steps. The same thing that we've heard from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has presented in our city in support of what we're doing locally, and told us, you know, with a quote and recently, that the local initiative here in Evanston and other places are building momentum and supporting the advancement of HR 40 and congressional reparations. So the conversation just needs to start. We need to start somewhere, understanding that, you know, really there is no Black reparation expert because we don't have reparations yet. But let's put our thoughts together. Let's agree on reparations and then work towards prioritizing what steps are first. But there are many areas of injury, as I stated. You know, chattel enslavement is going to be a little more difficult to get to that case for reparations because
Right.
the time passed. Now we can get there, no doubt. You know, the case is there. It's going to take more work. But we have police terror, we have predatory lending, we have still Jim Crow residents
Right.
are still alive today, and that
Right.
has impacted their life and therefore their legacy. So we can start somewhere. And this is different than equity work. This is different than ordinary public policy. This is justice work. It's repair specific for injury areas to a community that has been targeted. In this case, it's the Black community. But I want to speak to your experience in South Africa. I too was there in 2019. I couldn't go back in 2020 due to the pandemic, but South Africa is known for their truth and reconciliation work, and everyone wants to talk about how significant that is and how we must prioritize that. In 2019, I was there during an election season. The candidates were all talking about advancing reparations, and I see why. South Africa today is still the most racially and financially segregated country in the nation. And
Yeah.
that's with 22 years of truth and reconciliation work. So pay me my truth and my apology with reparations, and I'll go get the clinical help that I need to get past the trauma that I'm experiencing, you know,
Right.
in this nation. Pay me with reparations, and that's where I'm at. We need to tell the truth and reconcile it with reparations. But at we're going to do the truth work and reconciliation work, it needs to come along with some form of repair parallel at the same time. Otherwise, it's more ceremony, and that has only
Exactly.
continued to keep us racially divided.
Exactly. I want to get to that ceremonial. I'm gonna play this. You've probably seen it and heard it before. I'm going to play it for our viewers and have them listen to it and talk to you on the back end.
Yeah, I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea. We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president. I think we're always a work in progress in this country, but no one currently alive was responsible for that. And I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it. First of all, it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate. We've had waves of immigrants as well who've come to the country and experienced dramatic discrimination of one kind or another. So no, I don't think reparations are a good idea.
Listening to that, listen, listening to listening to that, I didn't know because we elected a black man president that therefore reparations was no longer needed. Okay, I didn't know that. That was new to me. I mean, the fact that the people who suffer are no longer alive, well, their descendants are alive, and the descendants of the slave owners are alive and reaping the benefits. They're living in the big plantation houses, or they're having the generational wealth passed down to them, and we're having to, pick up the chips, find out where we can, and do what we may. I mean, when you hear something like that from somebody, given who he is, but you hear something like that, how does it make you feel?
So I couldn't hear the clip while it was playing for whatever reason, but I've heard the statement before. Yeah.
Okay. It was Mitch McConnell saying that he didn't think reparations was necessary because of where we are today, and therefore we wouldn't know how to identify who we should give reparations to, and the people who started the slavery, they're no longer alive.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm familiar with the clip, and I would say that I could be nice and say that it's short-sighted, and that would be my politically correct response. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Just tell the truth. Just say what you want to say.
Can you hear me okay? I can't tell.
Yes, I can.
Yes. But I would say that it is, it's just pure racism. It's just pure white supremacy. It is purely a response from a white man who is comfortable and confident in his white privilege, and okay with the Black community being oppressed. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I could be nice and say it's short-sighted, but it is racist, it's inappropriate. It is in many ways inhumane that it is okay for him as a national leader to support the conditions of this nation and the conditions of the Black community in cities across this nation. And that's the type of leadership that we continue to fight against. And really, that's the type of policy that we still need to reform. And so, although we've even passed reparations here in Evanston, it's just as important that we dig really deep into our current policy and see where racism is still hidden in zoning, and it's still hidden in our various policies, that no matter how much we give, if we figure out how to get everybody $100,000 or $1 million, if we continue to have the systemic and structurally and historically racist policies that are enforced, then we haven't done much. And so that's why I say everyone should move forward urgently, understanding its incremental steps. The first part of full repair is cessation or guaranteed non-repetition of the terrible racist policies that we have. So while we're looking at compensation and restitution, we need to be looking at cessation, or we need to be looking at changing our policy. Representation is also very important. It's important that we have Black leaders and ally leaders that genuinely are for the empowerment of it, not more charity. A lot different than more charitable actions that keep us relying on systems and subsidies with the charity. We want empower us. Don't just give us a housing voucher and let us live rent-free in a subsidized, privately owned or government funded home that we can't pass down. We can't pass any wealth down. Give us reparations. Give us access to building wealth through ownership, land ownership, business ownership. Give us fair access to education, fair access to financial products and fair lending products. In this city, we had success stories that were able to overcome a lot of the racial barriers and housing barriers by straw buying. Black folks had to get white allies to go and make purchases because we could work hard enough to earn the money, but couldn't access the opportunity to buy in certain areas. And so it's important that we continue to do the work and we take every win that we can get and build on it, that we
Right.
build on the work of those that came before us. You know, we're not doing anything new. We are in these positions because so many have fought before us for our
Right.
voice to be raised up, like in Cobra. So the
Right.
work of Cobra has allowed us to be able to still talk about reparations today.
So does the 10 million,
And now I can't hear you.
oh, am I muted? Let me see. Can you hear me now? How's that?
Can't hear you.
Oh dear. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm not muted. Okay, no. There we go. How is it better now? Are you able to hear me now? Oh dear, we lost sound. Let's see here. There we go. How's that? Is that better? Oh, did we lose you, Alderman? Hopefully she'll be able to log back in or here soon. Yeah, there. Great. Perfect. How about now? Are you able to hear me now?
I hear you.
Okay, great. I was going to ask you about the 10 million, and is that something that's done annually? Is that 10 million there, or is that just an initial one time? The real question is how long or how much will be paid into the reparations for the residents, and have you identified a number in the pool in the target market to determine exactly how much needs to actually be paid out?
Sure. So our legislation, which is 126 R19, all of this can be found at cityofelvanston.org/reparations. The $10 million, this was before we passed the cannabis in the state of Illinois, was to be over 10 years. We're confident that the $10 million will come long before the 10 years because of the success of the cannabis industry. And so
Right.
far, this is with only one dispensary. So we're still waiting on
Wow.
our dispensaries to be awarded, hopefully social equity candidates. So we're hoping that some Black folks are awarded dispensary licenses. And then in addition to that, we passed 3 new types of licenses in the state of Illinois. So now we have transportation, craft grower, and home and infuser. So the revenue will be coming in much quicker. That was a very safe range that I gave to make sure that we had a sort of codified process. But we'll get the $10 million before the 10 years. Right now, the first $400,000 allocation is what we voted on Monday, March 22nd. That's what kind of was newsworthy. And we passed the first allocation and later disbursement, which will come this summer, of the first $400,000. So that'll be our first 16 residents in town to have this direct benefit, but there are going to be other collective benefits that will be available to all Black residents. And this is going to be with partners, whether it's financial products or services. Really excited. We have a partner that gave us a $100,000 for a cash benefit program. So we have 25 residents that are getting $300 a month unrestricted, no questions asked. And we're looking to build on programming like that. So again, we are, we're a small city, and these are small steps, but it's important that we've taken these steps and proven that reparations are possible. And now that that's happened, we've had others, as I've mentioned, continue to contribute to grow the fund.
It sounds wonderful and exciting. I'm thinking about just things going on around here in DC and what has happened here with us. There's the discussion is always, when we bring up reparations, it's always a question of wealth transfer and transferring wealth from the haves to the have-nots and from the rich to the poor. And I think the argument could also be said that slavery was a wealth transfer because we built this country. We didn't get paid. They got free labor from us. They didn't pay us for the labor. We built railroads. We built communities. We built houses. We built Congress and the White House and was never paid for it. That in itself is a wealth transfer. How do you deal with that argument? Or if you've had that argument, from those who always want to make that argument. Can't we identify saying that that in itself was wealth transfer because people worked for free?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. And I do believe that that's going to be the sort of focus of the congressional or the federal HR 40 discussion in terms of some type of a wealth transfer, because that was established in the in the slave trade or the slave economy. And I look forward to HR 40 passing. It has more co-sponsors than ever in its history. It has its first Senate companion bill that's been introduced by Senator Cory Booker.
Right.
Our Congress people here in Illinois have signed on as co-sponsors. And I believe as HR 40, excuse me, the commission is established and the remedy proposals are made, that some type of a wealth transfer or reparation tax or something along those lines will be important in funding the reparations.
Real quick before we have to go, are you expecting that everyone will be able to benefit? Everyone in the target market will be able to benefit from this, and they meet all the qualifications or requirements that you've laid out based on the bill?
So our current bill is residents that were here between 1919 and 1969 and their direct descendants. So everybody Black that lived here then or their direct descendants, I qualify, my grandparents were here, my mother was here, will qualify, and everybody Black that can show housing discrimination will qualify. But we will continue to work on it. Again, we're only 4% into this program with allocating $400,000. We have at least 10 more years ahead of us to do this work. I'm confident that the work is going to improve and get better and expand, and that we will be more inclusive of everybody Black, so more collective benefits in town.
And so ultimately, what is it that you're hoping to see happen in the city of Evanston as a result of this progress?
I'm hoping that we measure it and that we can say in 5 years that the homeownership rate increased, the net wealth of Black folks increased, the household income increased, all of our racial divides have been addressed in some measurable way. Now, we've seen studies that it's going to take 200 years or better for us to bridge our racial divide with equity work. So we expect that it's a process, but in 5 years, I want to be able to measure that we don't have this $46,000 household income divide, and that our home ownership rate is on an up trajectory instead of a decline, which it has been, and that our wealth is not declining, but it is increasing because the initial $400,000 allocation is going to build wealth through home ownership. But those Black contractors that are doing the work are going to receive it. So that's going to build additional economic development benefit through business opportunity and contracting and employing the Black workforce.
Right. Now, is it true that you're not going to run for re-election, or you've decided not to run for re-election? And if so, who's going to spearhead and take over?
So it is absolutely true. I made that announcement some time ago, probably over a year ago, that I'm not running for re-election. There's a lifetime of work for me to do in reparations specifically. So I'll be working full time on reparations. I'm continuing to work on with my city as a stakeholder and with the committee, and I'll be working nationally as well. I'm hopeful that the candidate that is best prepared is Bobby Burns, and that he will win his election actually tomorrow. He will continue the good work of reparations. But the beauty of the reparations work is the community leads it. So the legislators are really the facilitators. They take it through the legislative process. This work truly is to be community led, and I will join the community in advocating for the direction of reparations in Evanston.
That's what I was going to ask you. Have you or someone put together a community advocacy group, a lobbying group to make sure that we as Black folks can lobby the city council, the supervisors, the state holders, or whoever else to make sure we do that? Because one thing we don't do as a community is that we'll get out there and we'll get something, but then we won't lobby and stay in contact and keep the pressure on our elected officials to make sure they do what they said they were going to do. And that's why we always come back saying, oh, well, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. Well, you didn't hold them accountable to make them do what they said they were going to do. Do you have that in place, or are you putting that in place, or has someone?
So there is a community reparation stakeholder authority that has formed, and they have an additional private fund that's growing already. And I imagine that group is going to be the sort of the advocate and the overseers and check in with the community. But again, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right here on the block, and I take the work very personal. So I definitely don't plan to abandon it by any means. But we have a very engaged community here in Evanston. And once this work became newsworthy, then everyone was engaged, right? So
Right.
now we have even more voices, important stakeholder voices that are paying attention to the work. They're going to hold the elected accountable, they're going to hold the staff accountable. And I think we're going to be just fine in protecting the work and the goals that we have for reparations in Evanston.
Well, please make sure that we can stay in contact, because I want to make sure I can reach out to you and call you back again when things move forward and as we progress. Before we end, what's at stake for Black America in Evanston?
What's at stake? You know, we're headed in the right direction. So with reparations, our trajectory is on the upswing. We are feeling more of a sense of place. We move beyond apology, and we're feeling heard. We're proud to be an Evanstonian. You know, although we have a lot of work ahead of us, we've said yes to it with funding. And what's at stake is an opportunity for us to restore the wealth that we did not have access to for too many years, and to build on that good work.
Black America, we are owed what the federal government said it would give us. They gave us they gave reparations to the Japanese. They gave reparations to the Native Americans. They gave reparations in Germany. They gave them to Jewish internment camps. Political refugees. And I don't know if you know about this about our country, is that when we go into war with another country, we have to go back and pay for that country. We have to go back and build it up. Your tax dollars and my tax dollars go and pays to rebuild that country. That's reparations. Now, we have to go back and we do that. Political refugees, when they leave those countries and come here, we actually pay them. We give them $1,400, $1,500 per person, right? It's actually a little bit more than that. So we're looking at and dealing with a situation where we have been damaged. We have been damaged as a community, as a culture, as a race for 250 years. And we still haven't gotten our 40 acres and a mule. So Evanston, Illinois is doing something that the rest of the United States needs to do in each one of your cities. Each one of you listening right now, check your city, find out, go to your council member, go to your state legislator, and find out what's going on. And if there isn't something going on, the one thing we can take from Evanston and Alderman Simmons is that housing is one of the areas that we can definitely find a legal position to be able to fight for and get what we need from our government. Because the government, as we say, it's for the people, by the people. It's supposed to be for us. Well, that's what we need to do. Think about it. Iraq and Afghanistan, how long have we been there? How much money have we spent? That's because we've been there. If you knew that or didn't know that, hit me up in the chat box. My point is this. If we can pay every other country and race for what we've done to them, we can pay Black America for what they've done to us, especially given the responsibility that we have and what we see going on today. The Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, the White House, like I said earlier, we built that and didn't get paid for it. Railroads, cities, we built those and didn't get paid for it. That was wealth transfer, and that wealth transferred to them, not us. And we need to be able to receive that and get that. So we need compensation now. As John Lewis said, when do we want freedom? We don't want to wait for it. We want it now. When do we want reparations? We want it now. And we need to be able to receive it now. What Alderman Simmons has done is remarkable. Other cities are doing it, and even university. Georgetown, we heard last year, Georgetown is doing something to make sure that I think it's 250 families that were affected by what Georgetown did. Those families now have scholarships or things of that nature. But we need to be out there and we need to do something. And I want to thank you, Representative Alderman, for coming on and helping us get more details about this and understand it more, and put a call out, a clarion call to make sure that each community, all of us, wherever we are, get involved, get out there and do something. Because the basic ability to live a free and safe life for us and get our housing. I mean, I just looked at something the other day, and I don't know if you saw it, Alderman, but I think the highest Black home ownership, it's only 3 states above 50%. 3 states above 50% have Black home ownership. Everywhere else is 40 down to 20%. And Michigan and those areas, and I don't know what there's in Illinois. I don't remember. I think it was like 42 or 42%.
42 goes between 42 and 44.
Right. We need to be better. Whereas white America, they're at 60 and 70%. So there's a problem. There is no equity there. So we need to be able to get the equity. We didn't get equity with PPP. We didn't get equity with home ownership. We didn't get equity with business loans. We didn't get equity anywhere. So what's at stake for us is making sure that we get the equity we deserve. That's what's at stake. I want to thank you, my guest, Alderman Robin Rue Simmons. I apologize. I always get tongue-tied when I'm talking too fast. And she's the author of Reparations for America. I will be looking forward to seeing you and everyone else next week, because if it's social, economic, or political, it's Black Politics Today. Thank you so much, Alderman. We'll see you next time.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Until next week, gang, I want to thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for coming out and watching us as you did on your living room sofa. And let's make sure that we get out there and help our city, help our communities understand what reparations is all about. They want to call it a wealth transfer. Well, then, hey, wealth needs to be transferred, because it was transferred to them when we were breaking our backs to build it for them. Until then, good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Black Politics.